Welcome back to my channel, Homebodies. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, Catskill Mountain Homebody, where we do decorating, baking, cooking, cleaning, and general videos about living in the Catskill Mountain area of New York State. All right, it's a spring weekend, and it's kind of a low-key weekend for us. The weather is warming up. This week it's going to be in the 70s here, which is unusually warm for the Catskills, but we're looking forward to it. I'm ready for the green grass to come back and the leaves to come back. We're kind of in limbo between winter and spring right now, but it's starting to look nice out. Today, I thought I would share some funny stories, some from the family, some from me. Again, this is for my son Julius, but anyone might enjoy these silly stories, family stories. You know, I started realizing how important it is to record videos on family stories, because if you don't pass stories on from generation to generation, they get lost very quickly. And before you know it, the funny stories are missing or gone. So some of these stories have been passed down to me from my parents or grandparents. And then the first story I'm going to share is a personal story, my personal story, that was probably one of my most embarrassing moments of my life. And again, this is for posterity, for my son, and for anyone else who enjoys silly family stories. All right, so the first story I'm going to share in this video involves myself when I was about 23 years old. I was living in Rhode Island. I was going to grad school, and we rented a beach house. My roommate and I rented a beach house a few miles from the university because there wasn't enough on-campus housing for graduate students. So we lived in this little neighborhood, not far from the ocean, 2-bedroom little beach house. And I had a really cute, I thought it was cute, cabriolet, red Volkswagen cabriolet convertible that I thought was the cutest car on earth. And I found a picture of Joe in it because I was just started dating Joe at this time. All right, the other part of this story is that I had really, really long hair. I used to have hair that went down my back, and by 1993-94, I had grown it the longest that it was ever grown. So 1993 was really long. All right, so it was a spring afternoon, and I was running to class. So I got in my little cute cabriolet, thought it was real cute. Again, this was in a very quiet neighborhood. There's never very many cars. And so I drove down my street. I get to at the end of the street was a stop sign. And then I would make a right to go to the campus. So I get to the stop sign. And of course, at 23, I thought I was all cute. So I would always look at myself in the rearview mirror. So for whatever reason, I got to the stop sign. Nobody was around. I pulled down the rearview mirror and I look at myself in the mirror. And I had my hair, my straight, long hair. And on my head right here was a wasp. I am deathly afraid of wasps. And the reason I'm afraid of wasps is because a few years earlier than this, I was lying out in my backyard, getting a tan. And for no reason, a wasp landed on my thigh and stung me. I wasn't even moving. There's absolutely no reason for this wasp to sting me. I was literally a log. I was sleeping. And I got stung by a wasp, and it hurt, and it was a disaster. Ever since then, I'm terrified of wasps. I hate them. I feel like they just sting you for no reason, right? There's no reason to sting me. So I had a wasp on my hair, which is my worst nightmare, like on my head. So I put the car in park. I get out. I leave the door open. Again, there's no one around. It's the dead little tiny neighborhood, in a beach neighborhood that nobody lived in the spring. So I'm screaming because I hate wasps. Again, no one's around. I go in the middle of the road and I'm shaking my head, screaming like a maniac with my hair, trying to like hit the wasp out of my hair. I'm going up and upside and down. I'm shaking my head up, shaking my head upside down. My hair is all long. It's flying in the wind. So after a minute of losing my mind, I look up. I'm hoping it's gone. I look up. And behind my car had parked a pickup truck with two men, like older men, and they're running toward me because they don't know All they saw was a girl with long hair standing in the middle of the road with her door open, her passenger door open, screaming and swinging her hair around like a maniac. So now I am mortified that I've been caught doing this, and I forget about the wasp. So now these men are running toward me to help me. So I just go, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine. It was a wasp. It was a wasp in my hair." And I run in my car and I take off, and I drove away. Oh my God, I was mortified. I was so embarrassed. They must have thought I was a wild, crazy person. I don't know what they thought. They saw a girl in the middle of the street screaming at the top of her lungs. By the way, I never saw that wasp again. I don't know where it went. I guess it flew away. It wasn't on my hair anymore. I drove to school. I checked my hair, checked my clothes. No wasp. So I don't know where the wasp went. But in the meantime, these two men who I don't know think I'm crazy. And they just saw a girl with long hair screaming and flying her hair around. Oh my God. One of my most embarrassing moments was that moment. How embarrassing. But that's because of my hatred of wasps. And my son, Julius, also hates wasps. So I know that he'll sympathize with that story. All right. So that's my embarrassing story of ridiculousness that I want to share in this video. All right. The next story I'm going to share was told to me by my grandmother, but it doesn't involve my grandmother. It involves one of her sisters. And I don't even remember which sister this involves. All right. Remember I told you about my great-grandparents that I keep their photograph of their wedding in my kitchen. You all have met them before. This is Virginia and Michael Petroselli. Those are my great-grandparents. And as I mentioned in other videos, I've never met Michael. He died way before I died. He died when my mother was a little girl. But my great-grandmother, I did know. She died when I was 6 or 7 years old. I do remember her. She was very funny. And so this is their wedding portrait that I keep in my kitchen. Okay, so my mother's mother is their child. So they had many, many children. One of them was my grandmother. So my grandmother had 3 sisters. So there were 4 girls in the family and 3 boys and 4 girls. All right, so again, I don't remember which sister this involved. I have no idea. And my grandmother's gone, so I can't ask her. But this story epitomizes the silliness in my family. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was afraid of a lot of things. And she lived her life very cautious. And I don't know if she got it from her parents. I don't know where that cautiousness came from, but she always told my mother, be careful, don't go out alone. You know, when I was in my 20s, my grandmother would tell me, don't drive at night. Oh my God, you can't drive at night. You can't go out at night by yourself, 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, Grandma, we're going out at 11 to the bar. Oh my God, don't go out. You know, so she was very afraid. She was afraid of men. She always thought some men were she didn't want to be alone with strange men. She always thought she was going to be attacked. So this was the cautiousness of my family, the women in my family. So I guess her sisters were the same way. So again, this involves one of my grandmother's sisters. Was in an elevator. I don't know where, probably Newark or something. They used to live over there. So she's in an elevator by herself, and the elevator stops at a floor. The door's open. A man she doesn't know gets in the elevator. So now the door's closed. She's alone with a man in the elevator. Oh my God. She's alone with a strange man in the elevator. So she's now immediately terrified that the man's going to attack her. So she is leaning away from him against the wall, trying to lean away. She's afraid. He's just standing there like a normal person waiting for the elevator. She's afraid. She's leaning against the wall. Yeah, she's leaning against the wall. And the lights go out in the elevator. It's pitch black. So again, this is my aunt. I don't remember which aunt. My aunt is screaming for her life. And she's flailing her hands around because she thinks that the man is coming. He turned the lights off. She's screaming, help! Screaming, flailing. She feels the man come over to her. And she feels he kind of leans back on her. And she's screaming, screaming. And the lights go on. And then she realizes that when she was leaning away from him, pressing herself against the wall, she turned off the lights. So he had come in behind her and reached around and turned the light on the wall. There was a light switch behind her. And so then she realizes that he wasn't attacking her. She had turned the lights off. And now they're still in the elevator. And it's an awkward silence because now she realizes she's just a weirdo. And the man doesn't say anything. He's just standing there like kind of, what is wrong with this woman who's in the elevator with me? And then the doors open. Thank God she gets out because she's mortified. She's probably just as embarrassed as I was getting the wasp out of my hair. Except she was in an elevator screaming like a maniac and throwing her hands around away from the crazy person that she thought was attacking her, which wasn't attacking her. All right, and I have another similar story of the fear that my grandmother and her sisters had of men. Okay, when my grandmother was probably in her 30s or 40s, they were living in probably East Orange, New Jersey, over there somewhere. So, my grandmother was a housewife of the 40s and 50s, but she did work. And especially as her kids got older, she did work. She worked in different things. She ended up working in an accounting office. All right, anyway, so at a local high school, they were offering like a typing class. And it was at night after her husband, my grandpa, would get home from work. The kids were young. My mother and my uncle were young. And so she thought, well, I want to work and it would be good to have a typing skill. So I'm going to take this typing class. So she and a friend took this typing class. Again, it was like a few blocks away at a high school. And I think it was in the fall. So they would walk in the evening, early evening. They would walk over to take this typing class. They would walk home. And, in the fall, it would be getting darker earlier. So, it was my grandmother thrilled about walking in the dark by herself? No, but she did it because she felt it was safe if she wasn't by herself. And it was only a few blocks. So one night, they go to typing class. They're in typing class, and her friend turns to her and says, "Oh, by the way, I'm not walking home with you tonight. I'm getting picked up. I'm going somewhere else. So you have to walk home by yourself." Well, my grandma was horrified by this news because she knew it was dark. And it was too late for her. I mean, if she had known that her friend wasn't going to walk with her, she wouldn't have gone to class that night because she didn't want to walk by herself at night. But now she's stuck because she's at the class. Nobody to walk home with. Her friend's not going to be going home. So now she's stuck walking home in the dark. And again, it's only a few blocks, but she's now freaking out. So the whole rest of the class, she's terrified. How am I going to get home? By the way, my grandpa only had a truck. He owned a grocery store, and he only had a truck. And she really couldn't call him to pick her up because he had the truck and he had the kids, and so she couldn't ask him. So she had to walk. So she's walking home in the dark streets of I think it was East Orange. And she's looking around, she's terrified, she's trying to walk really fast, and all of a sudden there's a man walking towards her. She's like, "Oh my God, he's going to grab me. He's going to attack me as soon as I walk past him. He'll see I'm by myself. I'm going to be attacked." So as he's walking closer to her, he puts his hand in his overcoat, and she thinks, "Oh, he's getting a gun. He's going to get a gun. He's going to attack me." So she screams and she runs in the middle of the street. There's not many cars out. There's no cars out really. So she runs in the street. Oh, and she looks back, and he had pulled out a handkerchief. He was blowing his nose. So she ran home the rest of the way home in the street because she was so scared. But the poor man was just walking down the street blowing his nose. My grandmother labeled him as an attacker and was going to run away and ran away. He was pulling out a handkerchief. That's how scared my grandma was of people and situations. So that was another story my grandmother used to tell us all the time about the man who was blowing his nose. She thought he was a murderer. All right, the last story that I want to share involves me and my brother and sister from when we were in elementary school, middle school. I think I was in middle school. My brother and sister are younger. All right, so we used to spend the summers at a man-made lake in North Jersey. There were families that would also spend the summer, and this was a lake by our house. So we would go on the weekends, we would go swimming in this man-made lake. They had like a man-made beach. And then they had like a picnic area with barbecues. People would barbecue, and they had a snack shack, and they had tennis courts. And my mom would bring us there during the day, during the weekday, and then on the weekend, my dad would bring us, and we would spend many, many weekend days hanging out by this man-made lake that was a few minutes from our house. And there were other families who also would come every summer, so we got to know a lot of the families and the kids that would spend weekends and days at this lake. So again, I was maybe, I don't know, 11, 12, and my brother and sister were younger, and we had family friends that had two boys. One boy was my age, one boy was my brother's age. And so we were friends with them. We'd spend every summer playing with them and hanging out with them. So one time, and the boy who was my age said, "Hey, my mom brought coffee cake. Do you guys want coffee cake?" to me and my sister. And so we all, the three of us, my sister, myself, and this boy, went to the picnic table where they had the picnic basket, and we're eating pieces of crumb cake. We're standing there eating it. And my brother and my friend's brother come up to us, and they're like, "Hey, where did you get the cake from?" There was another family having a barbecue a few tables away, and there was a man barbecuing burgers for his family, and they had a picnic table out, and they were getting ready for their barbecue. So this boy that I was friends with and me, we told the younger boys, "See that man over there barbecuing? He's giving out free cake. Go get free cake. He just gave us this cake." So we don't know who this man is. So my brother and this other boy, and at the time they were maybe 8 years old. They run over to this man, and my brother says to him, "Do you have any cake left?" The man, and these are two strangers to him, and the man's like, "What?" And they're like, "Do you have cake? Do you have any cake? Do you have any cake?" Out of the blue. "Do you have any cake?" And the man's like, "Cake?" I'm like, "Yeah, you giving out free cake?" The man goes, "Cake? No cake." So then the boys come back to us. We're laughing so hard. We thought that was the most hilarious thing we've ever seen in our lives. So the boys come back. We're like, it's the man didn't give us cake. We had the cake here. You stupid. And so for years until this day, the phrase "cake, no cake" is a running joke in my family. We're like, "Cake, no cake." And and so like my son, all the cousins know this story of cake, no cake. And we pass it down we've passed it down generation to generation. Now I'm putting it on YouTube. So everybody will remember the cake, no cake. But I always think that man, like from his perspective, these two little kids come up to him and they're like, "Yeah, can we have cake?" Out of the blue. He's not, there's no cake out. He's barbecuing. He's not even eating. There's clearly no cake out. Like, why would these kids come up out of the blue, strange kids, and ask him for cake? And be like, "Do you have cake left?" He must have been like, "What is going on?" It's so silly. It's those silly, ridiculous stories that stick in your mind and make you laugh. And I can still laugh at that 35 years later. That story still makes me laugh so hard when I just think of that man, like, "Cake, no cake." That just is so ridiculous. But those stupid stories are what pass down through the family and make you laugh, always. I'm trying to think if I have any other silly, stupid stories from I do have other stories. I have my own stories. The hair one was the most ridiculous one, but I have other stories. My husband probably has stories too. Well, if I think of any stories, I'll make another video. But it is nice to have these family stories documented, to pass down these ridiculous stories of people in our family for posterity. So that, of course, the historian in me always thinks of that. So I just thought I would share those silly stories in our family that we talk about all the time. Cake, no cake. It's so silly. All right, so this is a brief video. I am going to be making more videos on cooking and baking, but today I thought I would just document some funny family stories. I hope you are writing down or remembering in some way your family stories to pass down to your kids and your grandkids. It is good to note some of these things, again, just for your family history. So maybe you should try it. Try to make a video of your family stories or write it down for the next generation. All right, well, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Cake? No cake.